Hi, everybody. Welcome. I think that we're on now. So welcome to
No.
User Guide
Yes.
for the Soul. Welcome to User Guide for the Soul. I'm not sure at what point in the last 10 seconds we started recording, but we're here again. I'm glad to welcome everybody. A nice class has joined us, and I'm sure many more coming to our YouTube channel. We're learning from the Tanya. We're learning a series on how to really approach life with joy in every situation, which, as we said, each class is so important now. Whether being in quarantine or whatever else is going on, it's a key tool. And these chapters are a little bit on the harsh side for the Tanya. And in chapter 30, we approach the problem of, once I've gone through all these tools for joy, right? What if none of them are working? What if I just don't feel joy in doing the kind of things that we do at temple, like learning Torah, giving charity? If that's the case, the Alter Rebbe says, it's probably that you have timtum halev, which is basically an apathetic heart, a heart that's stuck up. It's clogged up. And so he gives very, very uncharacteristic advice that in this case, even though you're doing everything, you're learning, you're meditating on God as we've learned, you're just not excited about it. We go through a big, deliberate listing of all of my flaws and faults in my whole life to try and, as they say, splinter my heart so the light of my soul can catch fire in my heart. So we're not going to go over that, but that was just a chapter on if you're really actually functioning as a Bainani and you're meditating and you're doing all the things that you want to be doing as a Jew and you're not excited, that's how you get excited, by, for a short duration, really focusing on crushing your ego so that now the light of the soul can flow through. But there's a little problem with this, which is if I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, oh, I'm so low, I failed this way, I failed that way. Well, that's when I'm looking at myself, but then I walk out in the world and I look around and I see other people. And I don't know about you, but more often than not, I find it very easy to see the faults in other people. And it takes a lot of focus and honesty to see the faults in myself. Anyone else have that experience? You can nod your head if that's true. Yeah. So someone else, has a character flaw, and ooh, that's easy to see, right? I know how they have to fix that, right? Easy to kind of figure it out. Character flaw in myself, I can ignore it for years, right? So I think that's part of the human condition. So we walk out, we see the world, and I see all these people, and I see all their flaws. And look, maybe some of them are honest. Maybe honestly, I'm at a higher level, so to speak, in terms of I give charity, I try to work on my anger, I'm a spiritual person, who knows? Maybe objectively, they seem to be functioning at a lower level than me. Maybe they're not giving any charity, even though they could. Maybe they're not learning, even though they have time and the capability. So doesn't that make it harder to consider myself lower than anyone else? Doesn't it make it harder to consider myself to break my heart and humble my ego if I go out and I'm looking around and my natural human reaction is to see the faults in others and ignore them in myself? In other words, to be judgmental, right? So if we're walking around and the pattern in our brain is to notice and maybe judge and maybe get a little inner pleasure from seeing someone else's flaws, now how am I going to really unclog my heart and make sure that I'm in that state where the light of my divine soul can get through to my heart? So that's what this chapter is about. It's about a technique to not just, as we did in 29, destroy the sort of smug self-assuredness of the animal soul by splintering it, but now to really go through an exercise where I not only see myself as on par with everyone else in the world, but I actually see myself as the lowest person who exists today. I'm more despicable and lower than any other person in the world. And being non-judgmental is going to be taken off. Being judgmental will be taken off the table in this chapter. So although we're talking about a very narrow window of where someone on this path will actually use this to crush themselves, I think it also is a very useful technique for us to approach anyone in our life with a very non-judgmental mindset. And not just, as we'll see, not just behaviorally, but really looking at it honestly, having that view of myself, assessing myself.
In the previous chapter, it dealt with only the Bainani, not the Russia, but now you're talking about everybody, even the Russia?
No, this chapter technically is addressed to a Beinoni again. This whole section is for someone who is a Beinoni, which means someone whose thought, speech, and action is all like 100%. They do everything right, but there's a struggle. And in this case, even though they're doing everything right and meditating and determining every thought, speech, and action, they're not excited about it. They have no joy. And the reason is because their heart stopped up. So it's still being addressed to that person, but I think a person like me, or kind of a regular, working on myself guy, can still benefit from the same approach, because who wants to be judgmental, right? That was a joke, but there you go. So let's get going. Od zot, yasim elibo lekayem mama rabotenu zichronam livracha, veheve shval ruach bifnei kol hadam. Go ahead, Rick.
Okay. One who suffers from titum halev must also set his heart to fulfill the instructions of our sages. Be lowly of spirit before every man.
Is this from Pirkei Avot? Right,
what page are we on?
You would have received in an email chapter 30.
30.
And,
okay.
Yeah, if everyone doesn't have it. So this is page 403 in our text. And if you're watching on YouTube, go down to the link. There's a link to a website that actually has the whole chapter up available, or ask Maya, she can send you our copy. This is from Pirkei Avot. So right out of the Mishnah, it says, "Be lowly of spirit before every man, every person, every human." So whoever I meet, whoever I walk into that day, whatever the situation, whatever they seem to be doing, right? Whatever pops into my head about what they're doing, I actually need to be humble before them. Humble meaning, whoa, humble meaning like I'm approaching, a pop star and having a conversation about their album that I love. And I'm just, wow, I wish I could do that. Let me, explain to me how you record so beautifully and sing and tour and manage to, keep your energy through the whole tour, and like such creativity. Like, can you share me a little of how beautifully you're doing this, right? Or if I meet a world leader and they're just so charismatic, I'm just, can I shake your hand? You really want to be humble, as if you're lower than them. And there's two problems the Alter Rebbe is going to raise about this Mishnah, about be humble before every person. The first is that we think the Torah is generally talking about the majority, but not all. So when you read this, if you learn it at this time of the year, there's a practice to learn it between Pesach and Shavuot, to learn Pirkei Avot. If you're just reading it, okay, be humble before everybody. I mean, not obviously everybody, but the general population, I should be humble, but obviously not, a criminal or someone who's treating me horribly or the Torah doesn't, the Torah leaves room for exceptions, but in general, that's a good approach, right? So that's problem one, is that we naturally think, and kind of halakhically, there's a reality where it could be talking about the majority and not absolutely everybody. Problem two is that when I say be humble, we often kind of think to behave in a humble way, right? So someone who's humble, that means, okay, even if I'm talking to somebody that's really, beneath me, so to speak, I still stop and I listen to them and I smile and I don't contradict them and I don't overwhelm them. But of course, it's just me being socially nice and humble. It's not that I really think, me with my degrees and my stature, my wealth, or whatever I might have that's propping myself up, that I think I'm really beneath this person. I'm just behaving in a humble way, even though obviously I'm in some ways above them in my mind, right? So that's the second problem. First problem, yeah, Norrine?
I just don't like this. That sounds hypocritical to me. And I don't know why we can't just appreciate ourselves and other people as well. And this lowering, setting levels is kind of silly.
Well, what's silly about it?
What's the value of it? What's the value?
Yeah, so we'll get to the value, but I'm curious, what's silly about it for you?
Because it's fake. It just seems fake to me.
Yeah, yes.
Is there anybody else that sees that?
Yeah, so Cindy,
you
just a
meet
minute.
somebody, they're wonderful, you can be wonderful too.
Yeah, so I think your reaction is part of that phenomenon that, yeah, you behave humbly, but it's fake, right? I mean, nobody
But if you
really ever,
practice it long enough, it becomes real.
maybe. Cindy, what was your thought?
My thought was to use Label's example of Moses, because that's something that really does translate to a better understanding than what's put down in the book, I think, which is
Yeah,
the fact that, go for it.
Yeah, Moses is a great example. The greatest prophet that ever lived, and also the most humble person that ever lived, right? So, you know, I know, Norrine, and I think that's part of what the Alter Rebbe is saying is that, well, are we really looking at this like kind of a fake thing, and like really what levels are there really? But on the other hand, the Torah really does say humility is an important thing, and the greatest person can also be the most humble person. So, and to answer your question, Norrine, why would we look at this? It's specifically in order to learn how to be non-judgmental. So let's see if we get through the Alter Rebbe's technique, if that answers that question. Yeah, but so that's the second problem. However you want to phrase it, there's a sense of like, well, you know, am I just acting humble, or do I really think I'm lower than this person? And the Alter Rebbe actually wants us to not just behave humbly, and not just behave humbly before most people, but he wants us to actually perceive it as the truth that I'm actually lower than this person, and that's why I'm humble, and everybody, and not just the majority of people, and not just behaviorally. So he's going to give us some meditations to really lock that in, because there's some truth to it once you see his perspective. And then by using those meditations, you can genuinely be humble before every person, no matter who, and have it be your reality, and not just as you said, sort of a fake behavior. So let's see if it works for us. Yes, Joey.
I think we need to always remember that everything contains its opposite. I mean, we need to be this humble, but we also, on the other hand, have to remember that we're part of this great orchestra that Hashem made, and without us, the song won't be right. So it's having both.
Yeah, but that's not the pocket we're opening up today. That's the other pocket, right? So today we're going on the I'm Dust and Ashes pocket.
Right,
you know.
right.
And depends what problem we're working on. Veheve bemet lamito.
The word implies be thus, and do not merely act thus in all sincerity.
Right. So here the Alter Rebbe raises, you know, our second objection, which is veheve, be. Right. So if I'm on this example, if I dislike someone, God forbid, not a good stance, but I'm acting nice even though I dislike them, like I don't like them, I'm just acting like I like them. Can I get myself to actually like them? I don't know. But I don't actually like them. I'm just behaving like I like them. Same thing here. We don't want to behave like we're humble. We want to actually be humble. The Alter Rebbe says, look, veheve, actually be humble. So that's the first problem, is the Alter Rebbe it says it's not going to work. You won't truly be non-judgmental if it's just your manner, if it's just a habit, right? We need to be deeper than that. And the second, bifnei chol adam mamash, afilu bifnei kal shebakalim. It's Norrine. Norrine, yeah, you're muted, Norrine.
In the presence of every man, even in the presence of the most worthless of worthless men.
Right. So kal shebakalim, that's a term of like the most irreverent person you can imagine. Right. So, you know, we have translations that are a little more or less judgmental, but like basically a shallow person for whom, you know, life is about, say, you know, my pleasure, my money, my success. And do I think about, you know, spirituality? Do I think about other people? No. And just objectively, if I were that person's mentor, I'd say, I think honestly, you're just all about yourself, and it's all nevesh b'amit. It doesn't mean that you're a total rasha necessarily, but you're just a very, very what was the word I just used? Non-pious person or non-reverent person. So kal shebakalim, that's a term we'll need throughout this chapter for someone that kind of skims through life rather than really trying to plunge in and work on themselves. So that's the second piece, is that we're not talking about just people generally, we're talking about every single person. So, you know, go to the environment you picture, whether it's a jail or whether it's some other place where you picture people that really have made choices that make you go, oh, and before that person, I also need to be actually humble and think I'm lower than them, not just as a behavior, right? So how do I do this?
This can be accomplished by following the instruction of our sages. Judge not your fellow man until you have stood, that is, placed yourself in his place.
And so here we have also from Pirkei Avot, it's not just that I should be humble before someone, it's that I shouldn't judge. I can't judge someone else until I've stood in their place. And what does place mean? Place means I don't know what it's like to be in their body and experience their urges, because we all have a different makeup. We've all been given a different body and an animal soul to deal with. So I have no idea what their drives and urges are. They could be very different from mine. B, I have no idea, as the Alter Rebbe will say, about their environment. So I don't wake up in their environment. I don't have their workplace. I don't have their circle of friends. I have no idea the influence that would have on me if I did. And of course, their place is also their place in terms of their whole life, because that lives with them as well. So I wasn't raised by their parents in their family of origin. I wasn't given their level of education. I didn't have the series of, divine providential experiences that have shaped them. So in so many ways, I can't be in their place. And, it's basically like the American saying, don't judge someone. Oh, sorry, iPhone 2, here you go. Don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes, which is good advice, because then if you do judge them, you'll be a mile away and you'll have their shoes. Silent laughing, right? Thank you. There you go. But the same thing applies here in Pirkei Avot. We are not allowed to judge someone until we've been in their place. And Chassidus says you'll never be in their place. It's not possible. You can't, teleport yourself into their body and remove your life experiences and replace them with their experiences and spend any time in their environment with their, with their surroundings. There's no way you can be in their place. And so you can never judge them. All right, so if we take this second quote seriously, that I have to recognize that the only way I can really judge someone is if I can be in their place, and I can't be in their place. That's going to be the secret to being humble before everyone and considering myself not just on par, but even lower than everyone I meet. Ki mekomo gorem lo lachato. Stan, I think.
For it is literally his place, that is, his physical environment, that causes him to sin.
Right, so on a simple level, if I have a job that requires me to go out and be, among people with different values than I would like, and I'm seeing things, if I'm in a big city, I'm walking down the street all the time and being bombarded by whatever advertisements and images. And, if I have to be online for my work, there's the whole business of online and that draw. And that has an impact on us, right? These are mostly, people devoting themselves to Hasidic life. They spend a lot of the time, in a synagogue. They spend a lot of time in a house of study. They spend a lot of time, learning with the chavrusa. They spend a lot of time, helping their family with home things. And how much time would they have to go out and find a bad influence? Not very much. So to them, the Alter Rebbe is saying, look at you, big shots. Waking up, going to a shul, staying in a house of study, going home and helping your wife with the kids, praying, going to bed, waking up and repeat. What do you know about the temptations of, a businessman who has to go to the marketplace and see everything that goes on and hear the talk and make connections and make friendships for their business and kind of the exchange of energy that happens? What do you know about their temptations, right? And you're looking at them and saying, look at them, right? They're sinning, but you have no idea. Because at the root of any time we judge someone is actually the sense, how could you do that? I would never. Right? How could you do that? I would never. It's not, and let's get into this, it's not that I judge someone for things that I fail at. Right? If I have a sharp temper, right, and I tend to snap at people, I'm going to naturally want to excuse myself. And by the way, other people, if I see someone who I think is a really, great person and they snap at someone, I'm like, well, we're all human, right? I'm not going to judge them. Well, sometimes I project and I do, but in general, we're going to cut people some slack for things that we fail at. We're not going to judge them. When I judge someone else, it's when I see them do something that I would never do, right? So I see someone, attacking someone physically. Oh my God, what kind of person does that? I would never do that, right? They must be beneath me, and I judge them, right? Or if I spend my whole life eating only a certain level of kashrut and I see someone else going to a restaurant, how could they do that as a Jew, right? I would never do that. But if I see somebody, gossiping a little bit, which is just as much Jewish law, and I'm used to telling a little story, now I'm not going to say, how could they do that? I'm like, yeah, everybody's human, right? So when it's my struggle, so we got a phone here that needs to be muted. Doreen. Oh, there you go. Okay. We're good. So generally, when we're judging somebody, we think that we are judging them. We think that we're judging them because they've done something worse than us. But in fact, it's not that they've done something worse than us. It's that their struggle is different than my struggle. Their struggle is different than my struggle, right? So the author is going to say, look at the internal world. How am I doing with my struggles? And if I'm failing in my struggles, maybe my struggle is a very, very subtle thing, seemingly subjectively speaking. Maybe my struggle is that I don't help clean up around other people in the house, and I just can't do it. And for someone else, that's like, why can't you do that? That's crazy. So someone else who's in jail for murder, they failed their struggle, which was, I actually want to kill this person, God forbid. And I failed my struggle, which is, why can't I be more considerate with my family and clean up after myself? Right? So we each have our struggles. I failed mine. They failed theirs. So why should I judge them? Right? How do I know that my struggle is any easier than their struggle? It's just different content. I don't struggle with killing someone. I've never actually had to hold myself back from killing someone, right? And they did, but I failed my struggle. They failed theirs. So that's where I was taking that process of assessing people away from what does your struggle happen to be, because that's just everybody's personal environment and their personality and their life path. Saying, never mind what the struggle is, that makes no difference. If you failed your struggle, you're Russia, and they failed their struggle, they're Russia, so at least we're on par, right? But this idea that I'm judging people because saying, I would never do that, well, I did do that. I did lose my struggle. I just didn't have the same struggle as theirs. So surprise, surprise, I didn't lose their struggle, but I lost mine. Does that make sense? Doesn't make sense to Norrine. Let's have the Alter Rebbe's words before we let's not get in the weeds, because I don't want to spend. I want to do 2 classes on this chapter if we can, because it gets again. Let's keep going. For literally, liot parnasato lelech bashuk kol hayom v'liot miyoshvei kranot ve'en avroot kol hatavot v'hanin v'ayin ro'eh ro'av alev chomer. I think we're at Sue Ellen, is it you?
Since his livelihood requires him to go about the marketplace all day, and whenever he is not thus engaged, he is of those who sit at the street corner. Thus his eyes see all sorts of temptation, and what his eyes see, the heart desires.
Right. So first of all, this person's struggles are informed by their environment. And someone who's spending all their time learning does not have the same temptations and influences as someone that's out, in Times Square, walking around, looking at, the whole world and what it projects. V'yitzro boer ketanur boera meofa, k'mo shekatuv beHosea hu voer ke'esh lehava v'gomer.
Additionally, it may be his spiritual place, the nature of his evil impulse, that leads him to sin. His evil nature burns like a baker's fiery oven, which is heated with greater frequency and intensity than a domestic oven, as it is written in Hosea. It burns like a flaming fire.
So he says, you also, along with the environment, you don't know the inner psyche and drives of this person. right? It may be that you have a struggle that you're winning and losing sometimes, but it may be that your drive is only 10% of their drive, right? And even though they may lose the struggle 90% of the time and pass 10%, their drive is 90% higher than yours. So they're in a bigger fight. It takes more energy for them. It takes more willpower. And you have no idea how you would respond if you were given their drive. So what business do you have judging them? So we don't want to judge a person anymore by their actions. We actually want to judge a person simply by their struggles, right? How are they doing with their struggles? How am I doing with mine? And by the way, we shouldn't judge another person at all. But when we're assessing our own worth, when we're looking at ourselves, we want to compare our struggles to other people's struggles, not our actions to other people's actions, because it's irrelevant, right? I'm basically saying, how dare you fail in this area that's easy for me when I'm judging them, right? Because I was never tempted to actually kill somebody. How dare you fail in that struggle that I wasn't given, but you were given, right? But I failed in my struggles, and that I can dismiss and forget about and start judging them for their actions, right? No. This person's struggle for embezzling or stealing or whatever is the same struggle as my struggle for what's happening in my life. And so it's struggle versus struggle that I should use to assess myself and whether I'm, humble before every people or above them or on par. It
is different, however, with he who goes about but little in the marketplace, and most of the day he is at home rather than at the street corners, and he therefore encounters less temptation.
Right. So if I'm learning Tanya all day, then how can I judge other people and not when I don't even face the environments that are challenging them? So Karen, I don't know if you'd like to read for us. Yes, so let me know if you want to. Doreen, you want to go ahead and read this?
I can. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. Thanks, Karen.
I just had on mute.
Great.
Even if he does go to the marketplace all day, so that his physical place is the same as that of the Kal Shebakalim,
Yeah.
it may be that his spirit place is different in that he is not so passionate by nature and is therefore not as greatly tempted by the sights of the marketplace.
Right. So what if I'm their colleague? Okay, so you're talking to your Hasidim who live, who spend all day, praying and learning. But me, I'm a businessman. And, this is my colleague, and I see them doing what they're doing, and I'm in the same environment. So maybe I should be humble before them because I have the same influences. No, I don't know what drives them. I don't know how much fire burns in their heart. Maybe I'm just a more calm person. God gave me a less challenging drive of my Nefesh Bamid, and they have a much more challenging drive. How do I know what their struggles are? I don't, so don't judge them. So Doreen, your turn. Yeah, Doreen, do you want to unmute yourself? Okay, let's come back. Paul, let me know if you want to read. I don't think you've read in the past. I think that's everyone. So let's start again with Rick.
I'm sorry. For the evil impulse is not the same in everyone. One person's nature may be more passionate and the other's less so, as explained elsewhere.
Right. So we can't compare. There's no apples to apples here. Everybody else is a airplane, and I'm an apple, and I shouldn't think that because I'm looking at someone else doing an action that doesn't tempt me, that makes them somehow better or worse. I have no idea. Their struggle with that was my struggle with something else, and that was easy for me, but I have my own struggles. So that's the level I want to judge myself. And by the way, if anyone on here, if I didn't address you and you'd like to read, just unmute and pipe up, and we'll get you reading. It's a fun thing. So then now he's going to kind of flip the coin a little, and he's going to say, even though I'm saying that someone else's struggle, I have no way of understanding how hard it was for them and whether I measure up to the fight that they're fighting against their struggle. he's gonna say it doesn't mean that they were allowed to do it. So he's just gonna check that box that this doesn't get to sometimes in America we have this sort of subjective, just every approach is fine, every culture is fine, every person's worldview is fine. We have this sort of subjective thing where who am I to judge other people? And, if somebody believes that this is the right thing to do, then that's right for them. Or if this society says this, or if young people do this, then fine. No one's wrong and no one's right and we're all the same. And obviously that's not the Kabbalistic view. Kabbalah says there's definitely a right and a wrong, right? As Jews, there's a right and a wrong in almost every aspect of life. And we want to acknowledge that. And we're not saying because somebody failed a struggle because of their environment or their personality or whatever the struggle was, that means it's fine. They can just go ahead and fail it, right? Whatever it was, they had the capacity to overcome it and they weren't allowed to do whatever it was that they did when they lost that struggle, right? So we're not minimizing the negative, but we're going to see as spiritual Jews, we can still acknowledge what's right and wrong and not go into this sort of perhaps wishy-washy, everything's fine thing, but at the same time be very, very rigorously non-judgmental and consider myself actually lower than other people and humble without saying, well, this behavior, I'm not going to say is a problem, right? והנה באמת גם מי שהוא מחומם מאוד בטבעו ופרנסתו היא להיות מיושבי קרנות כל היום.
In truth, even he who is extremely passionate by nature and whose livelihood obliges him to sit all day at the street corners.
So even somebody that really is just in the thick of the world and worldliness, אין לו שום התנצלות על חטאתיו ומקרה רשע גמור, על אשר אין פחד אלוקים לנגד עיניו.
Has no excuse whatsoever for his sins, and he is termed a Rasha Gamor, an utter evildoer, for not having the dread of God before his eyes.
Right, so if I'm that person, or if I'm that person's mentor, look, you did something wrong, you lied, you stole, you yelled, whatever it was, and you're a Rasha, and we have to address it. And actually, we say, no matter what the struggle, everyone's given the resources to overcome their struggle. By the mind controls the heart, right? This is going back to our early techniques. So whatever my struggle, I could assert my mind, I could direct it to the very opposite. I could force my heart to actually let me do the opposite, or I can actually train my heart to feel the opposite feelings eventually. But I have a mind, the mind controls the heart, and everyone can actually conquer every struggle. That's what it means to be a Beinoni. But does that mean I can judge somebody? Of course not, right? So these two things are true at the same time. כי היה לו להתאפק ולמשול על רוח תאוותו שבליבו מפני פחד השם הרואה כל מעשיו.
For he should have controlled himself and restrained the feeling of desire in his heart because of the fear of God, who sees all his actions.
So this standard stuff. This is just, the first chapter of The Mind Controls the Heart, how to be a Beinoni. So they need to go back and do that. And if I'm their mentor, that's the advice I'd give.
This fear of God would have enabled him to overcome his desires, despite the difficulties imposed by his surroundings and his nature. For as explained above, the mind has supremacy over the heart by the nature of one's birth. It is man's inborn characteristic that his mind is able to master and restrain his heart's desires.
Right. So they should have been able to, and let's do Dan next. I know we're different order and different screens, so it gets confusing. I should be able to, but in this case, the person didn't. And the larger question, do I have a right to judge the other person? Of course I don't. And the last Rebbe of this tradition, it's funny because I don't know if you heard the word kiruv. Kiruv, anybody heard that word? You know what that means? It's a term they use for usually Orthodox institutions that are reaching out to the wider community to try and get them to be more observant. Let's call it that, right? And the word means bring close, kiruv, from karov. And the last Rebbe of this tradition, his seventh generation disciple, hated that word. He hated that word, right? And even though this that Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, he was the one that almost invented the whole concept of, one Jew going out and offering a chance to another Jew to do a mitzvah or to sit and learn with them, with incredible energy, dedicating their whole lives. He did not like the term kiruv. Why? It means you're drawing someone closer to God or to Judaism. And who says you're closer than them? Right? How do you know that you're close to Judaism or close to God? How do you know you're closer than them? You're sharing Judaism. You're allowing someone else to do something Jewish. You're making the world a better place and giving people opportunities. Good. But why kiruv? You're the one who's closer. He also didn't like the term secular Jew, chiloni, right? Which comes from chol, comes from non-holy, right? Because the idea that there's me and then there's this non-holy Jew because, their actions don't follow my actions, so now they're not holy. No, he said, every Jew is holy. Who are you calling non-holy? You think you're holy and they're not holy? So, the Rebbe that invented almost, what they call kiruv, did not like the word kiruv and hated the word chiloni, and really because of this stance, right? We have no idea what someone's struggles are, and just because someone's actions don't correspond to my actions, and their struggles are not the ones I have, doesn't mean that I'm higher. In fact, we're going to see that I can see myself as honestly lower than them by the time I get to the end of this chapter. Dan?
Truly, it is a great, fierce struggle to break one's evil nature, which burns like a fiery flame for the fear of God. Indeed, it is like a veritable test.
Yeah, so again, he's saying, even though this person should have succeeded and they had the potential to succeed, you have no idea how hard that struggle was or how many times they had to pass the test to refine their soul. You have no idea their path, right? So think about yourself, think about your struggles, and guess what? If you didn't pass your struggles, neither did they. So you're in the same boat.
Therefore, every man ought to weigh and examine his own portion according to the standard of his place and the rank in the divine service.
Right. So what my position is, that's for me to assess. How many times did I fail whatever my tests were? Doesn't matter if my tests were different than other people's tests. How did I do? Right. What's the grade on my paper today? Im hu oved Hashem be'erech uvchinat milchama atzuma kazo v'nisyon kazeh.
As to whether he serves God in a situation requiring a comparable struggle in a manner commensurate with the dimensions of such a fierce battle and test as the Kal Shalachim faces.
Right, so the question we have to ask ourselves is, okay, how hard was my struggle and how did I do? Because chances are this person that I'm judging for whatever reason has a much stronger drive, has much more tricky influences, and they've got a much harder test in front of them. So did I approach my test with the same struggle they're using, even if they fail? Did I approach it with the same battle ready energy as they did? Right? Did I rise up to their level, in fact? Right? So I sat and I was learning Torah all day, and did I do it with the same struggle that even this Kal Shabakalim that I'm judging, that they approach their struggles with, or did I fall beneath them? And now the Alter Rebbe is going to give 3 examples that follow the 3 pillars of the world: Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim. Right? He's going to say, look at how you did in Torah study, look how you did in prayer, and look at how you did in charity. And even though you did them and you checked off the boxes, were you just in your comfort zone, or did you even come close to the level that this person you're judging had to approach their struggles with? And then see who you think you should be judging. Okay, and here I'd like to we'll go a little faster and we'll start skimming through, there's a big chunk in the middle. There's a whole list of if you really need this, if you need to go deep in this, there's a whole list of meditations and pieces you can focus on, but I'm going to give some ideas and get us through the rest of the chapter a little more quickly. In the realm
In the realm of do good In the service of prayer with kavanah, devotion, for example, he must battle his evil inclination daily in order to pour out his soul before God with his entire strength.
Right, to the extent of wringing out my soul. Right, so this first section is about prayer. And while we're all used to coming to temple and praying, or perhaps opening up our virtual services and praying, you know when you're a regular attendee that there's a certain automatic that can take over, versus when you're really there, really passionate, and you're really, speaking to God and really, looking into yourself. That's a different state. And so the Alter Rebbe says, yeah, while this person was out sinning and you were standing praying, did you approach prayer with the same struggle that they approached their struggle? Did you meditate before you prayed to find a divine concept that would make your heart burn? Did you really put your whole heart in, or were you focusing on what you're going to do tomorrow as we kind of skim through the prayers, right? So how much kavanah did you put in, and did you approach the level of this kal shebakalim? And if not, then you don't measure up to them, right? If you're not, don't think you're on par with them. If not, they're ahead of you, because they're putting much more energy into their struggles. Different action, but you didn't approach their level of fight, right? You didn't hustle harder. In fact, you hustled less when you got up to pray this morning. And right then at 408, he goes into blessings. Sorry, where was? Looking for the charity, right? Prayer. Right, so then going through the bottom of 408, now he talks about Birkat Hamazon, which, if you say the Birkat Hamazon after you eat bread every time, or if you've been to, a community that does, Birkat Hamazon can be kind of chick-chock, right? Like, yeah, we're done eating, and you can say it so fast, and not exactly the environment where you want to kind of, go all spiritual. You're sitting at a meal with kids, and, so how often do we approach Birkat Hamazon, or we've eaten food and we're blessing the food, it's a mitzvah, with that same passion, right? Or are we like way behind this kal shebakalim that we're judging? And then he talks about Torah study, right? So here on 409, similarly when we're studying Torah, right? Do we just say, okay, I'm going to 1 hour class, and when it's over, now I go back with my life? Or I'm going to go over a chapter today and then I'm done? Or did I push myself to do more? Because I'm used to studying a chapter a day. I sit down, I do it, it's normal, I finish, I'm done, I'm comfortable, right? Was I struggling like this person I'm judging? They're pushing with all their might to overcome this drive or this desire, and here I am sitting in my easy chair learning, and I'm done, right? Or did I push myself to learn much more than I'm accustomed to? So again, if I didn't approach with the same struggle, now I'm not on par with them, I'm actually beneath them, and I really should be humble and say, whoa, look at this person, and the devotion with which they're approaching their struggles, and the fire they have, and the drive they're overcoming. Like, I could learn from this person. I need to learn from them and bring that into my life, not the opposite. Right, and let's go to 410. This I want to read, right? So one other problem we'll have is if I'm looking at someone else that's doing actual sins, and the Alter Rebbe is saying, yeah, but did you struggle as hard with what you were doing? I still have two categories, right? Yeah, okay, I didn't struggle as hard, but they're actually doing a sin. You're just saying I didn't do a good deed, a commandment, as much as I should. Two different categories, right? Still, okay, I can learn from them struggling, but I'm still a bigger category than them, right? Because I'm doing mitzvahs and they're doing averas. So the Alter Rebbe takes that off the table too. He says, "Umali b'chinat surmera, umali b'chinat vasetov." So we're at 410. I think now we're at Joey. Joey, you want to read for us 410? What difference?
Yeah, I lost the page, so I'll pass.
Okay, Karen, you want to go 410? What difference is there?
What difference is there between the category of turn away from evil, in which the kal shebakalim fails by active violation, and the category of do good, in which he fails by neglecting to exert himself in prayer, Torah study, and the like?
All right, and Norrine, you'll read Hakol hi mitzvat hamelech hakadosh yechid u'miuchad baruch hu. Both. Yeah. Doreen, have we got you?
I'll take it. Both are the commandments of the Holy King, the only and unique one, blessed be he.
Right, so I might think that just because I missed on the positive commandments, okay, but I'm not as bad as someone who messed up on the negative commandments and transgressed. The Alter Rebbe says, no. You know, I mean, halakhically, there's different categories, but the commandments exist on different levels. Here in the world, when I do a good deed, it refines me and it helps people around me. When I do a bad deed, we learn to kind of punctures my spiritual body, so to speak. But up in the highest heavens, where the commandments exist, like in Atzilus or within the Ein Sof, there's not any distinction between good and bad. There's no world yet. The commandments are just divine will. And whether I'm doing a positive commandment not as well as I should, or transgressing a negative, it's all just God's will, right? Before the world was created, there's no difference between stealing $1 and giving $1 to charity. They're just both something. Sorry, there's no difference between not stealing $1 and giving $1 to charity. They're both just what God wants. God hasn't yet created a world with money for me to steal or give to charity, right? So if I look at it from God's perspective, we're all in the same boat. And whether I could have done more and didn't, or someone else shouldn't have and did, God just says, I don't want you to do any of it, and you're all failing your tests, right? The whole lot of you, and I'm included. It doesn't matter. I can't say, well, I didn't do an Avera, so really, you know, I transgressed God's will. And in terms of spiritual realities, now I failed my test. And then at the bottom of 410, he gets into charity. So somebody who didn't give beyond the measure that was normal or comfortable, or to quote the Rebbe of this system again, when a wealthy person asked, how much should I give to charity? He said, you have to give till it hurts. Right? So if I have a certain amount budgeted and I've comfortably budgeted and I give it to charities and I feel like I've done my bit, that's great. But if I'm not feeling it, I'm not giving up something by what I'm donating, now I haven't really spiritually pushed myself to the level, certainly not the level of someone we're describing who has much greater struggles that they're dealing with. And then if we do need some negative commandments to think about, he goes into the issue of gossiping, right? Which, you know, we often tell stories about people and it's kind of par for the course in the nature of life, even like subtle stories that aren't super negative. But how often do we get into that and not stop ourselves? So he says, so consider that if you'd like, if you need something else to compare yourself to. And then also on page 412, he goes into what we learned in previous chapters about iskafia, about making ourselves holy with permitted matters. So how often when I was eating a meal, did I just say, okay, mealtime, sit down, eat, enjoy, say the blessing, good, I'm done? How often did I say, stop, make sure I'm approaching this meal in another centered way, maybe learn 30 seconds of Torah, then have kavanah while I'm eating, and when I say my blessings, make sure this spark of the world is being elevated. So how often did I take my material world and use it to truly elevate it as much as I could, with the same struggle as these people that, you know, I hope at this point that I was judging, but I no longer do. And we get to 413. So we'll start up again in 413. Right? So at this point, if we've gone seriously through this and we say, I can't judge anyone until I'm in their situation, I can't be in their situation, I stop looking at actions and I'm just looking at struggle versus struggle. So I'm failing and they're failing. That's great. I've gone through all these areas where I can say, have I approached this and this and this? Torah, acts of kindness, study. Have I approached them with the same struggle that they are? No, I haven't. But still, maybe now I'm on par. We're all in the same boat. We're all failing our struggles. So if I'm on par with people, why should I be humble? Because if someone's my equal, maybe humility is not automatic. So now you're really going to nail in the last point, which is the more we know, the lower we're considered actually, not just by behavior. אבל באמת, אם הוא יודע ספר ומחזיק בתורת השם וקרבת אלוקים יחפץ.
In truth, however, if he is a scholar and holds God's Torah and wishes to be close to God.
Right, so maybe relatively speaking, someone in this class is becoming more scholarly or maybe has learned many years And so here we are, we think perhaps we're on a higher level because we're learning the Tanya or some other class. But whenever somebody does that, and this applies, I think, to each of us, that the more we learn, it should make us humbler rather than, God forbid, feeling like we're above people. Gadol avono min so ve'ashmato gadla b'chiflei chiflaim b'ma she'eno nilcham mitgaber al yitro be'erech uv'chinat milchama atzuma hanizkeret la'el.
His sin is unbearably great, and his guilt is increased manifold for his not waging war and not overcoming his impulse in a manner commensurate with the quality and nature of the war mentioned above that the Kal Shabakalim must face.
Right? So, okay, they failed their struggles. I failed mine. And he's enumerated many struggles I could focus on. So if I happen to be great at Torah learning, look at my tzedakah, look at my gossip that may come out of my mouth, right? Okay, we both failed, but guess what? The fact that I'm learning this stuff, the fact that I have the information, I have the opportunity, I have the time, now my guilt at failing my struggle is actually bigger than their guilt for failing their struggle, right? Because I had the resources. More was expected of me, right? So the more I learn does not make me now greater in front of everyone. It makes me actually at a lower level, because anytime I fail my struggle, now, boom, the consequences are much greater and the guilt is much greater.
His guilt is far greater than the guilt of the Kal Shabakalim, the most worthless of the street corner squatters who are remote from God and his Torah.
Right, so someone that has no time, someone that God forbid, lives on the street, and maybe is committing petty crime to survive, and certainly has no time to come to a Tanya class, right? Okay, maybe they're failing their struggles and I'm failing mine, but can you compare the responsibility? I mean, who says they should be passing their struggles to begin with? I'm the one that's learning this and that's having a system and has time to meditate. So, I mean, aren't I a bigger lowlife for failing my test when I have this information and I'm applying myself? And, of course, my guilt is greater. Right? And so who says I can look at them? I should be learning from them, and I should be trying to emulate them, in that not only did they approach their struggles with more vigor than I did, but the deck was stacked against them and they still did better than me. Right? Or even they did just as well as me. We both failed. The deck was stacked against them. So sorry, but my guilt is greater here and I'm lower. Let's finish, Norrine, then we'll talk. Let's finish. Vein ashmatam gdola kol kach b'ma she'enam kovshim yitzram haboer ke'esh l'hava mipnei pachad Hashem hamevin umabit al kol masehem. Their guilt, Dan?
Their guilt for not summoning up the fear of God, who knows and sees all their actions, in order to restrain their impulse, which burns like a fiery flame, is not as heinous.
Right, so give me a break, right? What are they concerned about? They're concerned about finding a place to stay. They're concerned about making the next deal. They're concerned about whatever it is. And so they didn't have the time and energy and information like I do or you do. So why would I or you ever judge them when they're way ahead of us on this? Right? I mean, they were at the Olympics, and we're here, at some high school meet, and we think we're so great because we didn't pass, we didn't win first, second, or third, and neither did they. But guess what? They failed at the Olympics. We failed at a high school meet. So who's the better athlete here? As
the guilty one who draws ever nearer to God, his Torah, and his service.
Right? So someone who's really learning and praying and spending time, that person, it's easier for them to succeed, and they have more responsibility to succeed. And with more knowledge comes greater guilt for failing these struggles. Certainly not feeling like we're above, but rather now seeing the more I learn, actually the lower I am compared to someone with less knowledge. As
our sages of blessed memory said of the apostate Acher Eliezer ben Avrahai, because he knew my glory, said God, Despite this, he still sinned. His guilt is far greater.
Hechler was a great sage who turned apostate, and you know that was the fact that he was an apostate was terrible, but the fact that he was a great sage who turned apostate, that now no one can compare, right? Because me, I'm just a regular guy with some knowledge. If I go apostate, it's bad, but I mean, Hechler, for him to do it, it's hard for me to even imagine having that kind of holiness and closeness to God, and then going to the other side. So we don't want to judge Hechler, but he's saying that's a model that the more knowledge you have, the more responsibility, the more guilt, even if you have a subtle failure in a struggle. 4:14, V'lechen amru rabbeinu zichronam livracha al amei haaretz shezonot nasu lahem ki shgagot. Let's go back to Rick.
Therefore, our sages declared in regard to the illiterate that deliberate sins are regarded in their case as inadvertent acts, since they are unaware of the gravity of their sins.
Right? So if I'm here learning Tanya, and if I'm meditating in the morning, I'm saying prayers, and I'm giving charity, that means that I'm more guilty than someone who is, and not less. Right? So in this field now, where we all have the same struggles, and we're not judging another because we don't know what their struggles are. What's easier for them is hard for me, and vice versa. So say we're all failing, and I can see the struggles I'm failing in. The fact that I'm here in a Tanya class or learning means now I'm more guilty than them, and I can truly approach them and say, wow, I should be humble before this person when I see how hard they're working every day, how much drive they're approaching this with. So much so that even halakhically for them, when they do an act that for me would be, a transgression, for them it's considered just, oops, it's a mistake, right? Like halakhically, there's a difference between, say I decide I'm going to keep Shabbat in a certain way. Say I'm not going to drive, for instance, if I decide to do that. And, just out of habit, I woke up in the morning and I thought it was the other day, and I got in the car and I started it, and then, oops, I turned it off, right? That's very different than me saying, you know what? I'm going to go for a pleasure drive today, even though I said I wouldn't, right? So one's a deliberate act, one's a mistake, an accidental act. They're different categories of transgressions. So I could look at two people doing, one of them breaking some kind of halakha, and I can, from traditional point, say that's wrong, whatever. And look at somebody else who's just, they only studied 40 minutes of Torah today instead of doing, an hour 15, which is more than they should have done, more than they were used to. But this person who's breaking Jewish law, halakha says, no, it's just an accidental mistake, right? Because they don't have the background, the knowledge, they're not accustomed to it. This person who's, keeping everything and is learning Torah, but because they didn't learn the extra, now that's considered basically a deliberate act, right? So we have all these meditations to try and drive home that in the end, when I'm looking at other people, I can't say, well, I'm less despicable than them because of what I'm seeing, right? When I'm in this process of perhaps crushing and splintering the heart, to let the joy shine through, I shouldn't let it get in the way that I look around and I see other people seemingly failing and seemingly in a state that I can judge, right? Just the opposite, I should say, wow, we're both failing our struggles, but mine are much easier than theirs, all things considered. So I have to learn from them and approach them truly being humble. And of course, this applies to everybody, because guess what? The lower the person seems to be, whether we're talking about crimes or personality, someone that you just say, oh, why would I be humble in front of that person? That's the person that has the biggest struggle, and before I should be the most humble. Literally every person, and consider myself lower, not just acting lower. And even though I think no one here is in a state where we spend all our time doing mitzvahs and learning, and we're not at that level, still this is a good approach for anything in life. I think approaching somebody with a sense of judgment, thinking that you're better than them, is always going to make you a less effective person and make life, make your contributions to the world less effective. And approaching with a sense of humility that every person you meet has something to teach you and is functioning at a higher level than you, really lets you contribute more to the world and it is a beneficial thing in every way. So whatever we do at temple, in the world, with our families, I think we can learn from this chapter 30. Next week we'll get into 31, which is about the difference between sadness and bitterness. Two very different concepts, and one we want to avoid, one we want to harness. So I'll hang around now for a few questions. I know Norrine, being the most learned person here, you probably took this all very personally. What do you mean? I know more Torah, so I'm more guilty. So I know there's some questions. We'll keep it open for another 5-10 minutes, and let's have any discussion.
I have two things maybe you can help me with. First of all, it seems to me that we're saying that we can be judgmental. We're not to be judgmental about other people, but we can judge ourselves.
100%. Yeah, we're supposed to judge ourselves.
Be very, very, very humble.
Yes, that's a good way to put it, right? I should judge myself. I'm not allowed to judge other people. So, of course, I'm going to be humble in that case because I am busy judging myself, and other people I'm saying they're getting 100% as far as I'm concerned. So why would I be humble if I'm only judging myself?
And in that way, the thing I'm having trouble with, I keep thinking of the white supremacists.
Ooh.
And they're passionate.
Yeah.
They think they're right. I understand where they've come from. They've come from a certain environment that has influenced them.
Yeah.
If I'm not to some extent judgmental and realizing what is, then it stops me from acting in a way I think I should be acting or reacting to where they are. So you've taken away a tool from me of doing some good in the world, I think.
Yeah, so an important question.
I'm judging.
So do we get to sort of the turn the other cheek side of things? Where I say, if I'm not judging them, then who am I to judge them for smacking me in the face or burning down my shed or chasing my kids around town? It's their struggle, right? I'm not going to judge them. So in Judaism, just like there's a difference between acknowledging right and wrong versus judging. So we always acknowledge right and wrong. We know what's right and what's wrong. So hitting someone for no reason is wrong, right? I'm not going to judge somebody because that's what they've done, because that's not a stance I want to be in. But it doesn't mean I'm going to let them hit someone, right? So if there's a white supremacist in my area and they're acting up and they're doing things against temple or me or my family or the community, it's my job to do what I can to stop them, right? But no one says I'm going to be more effective in stopping them if I confuse things and think, well, I'm such a better person than them on the inside. I wasn't raised by their parents who taught me to hate this and hate that. I wasn't indoctrinated. I don't know their background. I don't know their level of whatever. And so I can't assume that if I was raised in a family that hated some other group, that I would have turned out any different. I can't assume that if I were in their shoes, if I were in their place, that I would be a less hateful person. But definitely that does not mean I'm not going to stand up and stop them from the actions they're doing if they're wrong. That's different. But I can do that in a judgmental way or not in a judgmental way. I can acknowledge right and wrong, and I can protect what's right without being judgmental about the people and their struggles that perhaps are involved in the activity.
But you have to make some kind of a judgment that what they're doing is wrong to be able to function and counteract that, I think.
But you're talking about judging behaviors, theoretical behaviors, right? So of course, Torah says, do not murder, right? So I'm acknowledging and I'm judging general behaviors as, not murdering is good and murdering is bad. And we're making that judgment. It's not even a judgment. We're doing it because it's a mitzvah, right? I mean, God said murder is bad. We all feel it in our guts. But that's different than judging the person, right? So I'm clear. I acknowledge that these behaviors are right. These behaviors are wrong. But I'm not judging the people because they wound up doing the behavior that I acknowledge is wrong, because I don't know how I would have done in their shoes. So I'm only talking about not being judgmental about people versus knowing right and wrong. That we have to know clearly. Does that kind of speak to your question, Norrine?
Little.
Anybody else got any questions? I think
it's kind of ironic that we're studying all about humility right now, because when you're counting the Omer, that's what you're talking about right now. It's all about humility this whole past week.
That's true. Yeah, we just finished the week of of hod,
Right.
which is acknowledgement and humility. So absolutely, it's been a very, very good time to learn this. Nice
So I
point.
kind of think it's kind of ironic that we're studying this chapter in the Tanya this week. So
Yeah, a beautiful
It's-
time. Yeah.
Richard, you know there are no coincidences.
yeah, that's true.
All right, I'm gonna end the recording now. I'll give you a chance to say goodbye after. Thanks for everyone who's joining. We hope you'll come back for the next class. And as I said, all the resources you need to follow along are down in the metadata for this video if you're watching on YouTube. So it's been a pleasure learning with you. Thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure learning from all of you, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.